Bruce and I were really attracted to each other, but familiarity can breed contempt. So we didn't act on it. Too bad. Because based on how much we ended up hating each other, the sex would have been incredible.
For years, Smith continued to talk openly about the feud, calling the experience true darkness. Willis stayed mostly quiet, but did call Smith a whiner in one interview. There were also counterclaims from unnamed sources that Smith's own on-set behavior, like his frequent marijuana use, was the real problem, a claim Smith denied. For over a decade, the Kevin Smith versus Bruce Willis feud stood as the prime example of the actor's difficult reputation. It's clear the stories around Bruce Willis are intense. We've covered the early days and the infamous cop-out feud. But there's so much more, including a very public falling out with one of his closest friends. If you're finding this Hollywood deep dive fascinating, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's next. Now back to the action. While feuds with directors and co-stars paint a picture of a difficult professional, the conflict with Sylvester Stallone was different. This was personal. Stallone and Willis weren't just colleagues. They were friends, fellow action titans, and business partners in Planet Hollywood. They had history. That's what made their public fight over. The Expendables 3 Rewind. So shocking. It wasn't just a disagreement. It was a public announcement that a friendship had been destroyed over money and ego. The first two Expendables films were a celebration of 80s and 90s action movies. Willis, as the CIA agent Mr. Church, was a key part of that. When it came time for the third movie, everyone assumed he'd be back. He wasn't. The negotiations fell apart in spectacular fashion. According to sources close to the production, it was all about the money. Willis was reportedly offered $3 million for 4 days of work. He allegedly countered, demanding $4 million, $1 million a day. Stallone and the producers flatly refused. Willis walked. Stallone, the heart of the franchise, was furious. He didn't just recast the role, he went on Twitter to air his grievances. On August 6, 2013, Stallone tweeted, "Willis out, Harrison Ford in. Great news. Been waiting years for this." But it was his follow-up tweet minutes later that really lit the fuse. Stallone wrote, "Greedy and lazy, a sure formula for career failure." There was no doubt who he was talking about. Stallone's representative later confirmed the comments were aimed at Bruce Willis. It was a stunningly blunt and public takedown from a supposed friend. The words greedy and lazy were a direct shot at Willis's character and work ethic. Willis never responded publicly. The incident, however, left a deep scar. It wasn't just a business deal gone wrong, it was the public implosion of a high-profile friendship. Stallone later seemed to regret handling it so publicly, but the damage was done. This feud stood apart. A clash with someone like Kevin Smith could be blamed on different styles, but this was with a peer and a friend. It suggested Willis's difficult reputation wasn't just about on-set antics, but an approach to business that even his closest allies found infuriating. For years, the story about Bruce Willis was written in stone, legendary action hero, but incredibly difficult to work with. But in March of 2022, that entire narrative was turned upside down, forcing everyone to re-examine everything they thought they knew. Willis's family announced he was stepping away from acting after being diagnosed with aphasia, a devastating neurological condition that affects a person's ability to communicate. A year later, in February 2023, the family gave a more specific and tragic update. His condition had progressed to frontotemporal dementia, or FTD, a cruel disease with no cure. Suddenly, the last decade of his career came into horrifyingly sharp focus. The string of low-budget, direct-to-video films he'd been making, which many saw as a lazy cash grab, was cast in a new, heartbreaking light. Reports emerged from the sets of these films painting a picture not of an egotistical star, but of a man who was struggling deeply. Co-workers described a man who often seemed lost and confused. Directors recalled having to shorten his lines and shoot all of his scenes in a single day. There were accounts of Willis needing his lines fed to him through an earpiece. On the set, Of the 2020 film Hard Kill, actress Lala Kent recalled a frightening incident where Willis allegedly fired a prop gun on the wrong cue twice. Another director shared a story of Willis being unable to understand basic instructions, leaving the actor confused. It became painfully clear that what some saw as laziness or difficulty was likely the tragic result of a degenerative brain disease. Reports suggested he kept working, despite his declining health, to make sure his young family would be financially secure. Media outlets have also reported that he is now largely nonverbal and has mobility issues, though his family has not officially confirmed the extent of these details. This revelation sent a wave of remorse through Hollywood. The most prominent voice to express this regret was one of his biggest critics, Kevin Smith. Hearing the news, Smith tweeted a heartfelt apology. Long before any of the cop-out stuff, I was a big Bruce Willis fan, so this is really heartbreaking to read. He loved to act and sing, and the loss of that has to be devastating for him. I feel like an a-hole for my petty complaints from 2010. So sorry to BW and his family. Smith's apology captured a collective shift in perspective. The soul-crushing experience he had described was now seen through a lens of empathy. The difficult actor was now understood as a man fighting a private battle. This new context doesn't erase the past. The conflicts on Moonlighting, and with Stallone, happened long before his symptoms would have been obvious. But his diagnosis provides a crucial, humanizing final chapter, suggesting that at least some of the friction in his later years was not a matter of ego, but a symptom of a tragedy. The story of Bruce Willis is a story of two sides. On one hand, you have the icon, John McClane, the face of cinematic cool for a generation. His contribution to movies is undeniable, his place in the action hero pantheon secure. On the other hand, there is the man, whose professional life was marked by burned bridges and broken relationships. From the volatile early days on Moonlighting, with Sybil Shepherd, a pattern emerged. The public feuds with director Antoine Fuqua and his one-time friend Sylvester Stallone solidified this reputation, painting a picture of a man who could be stubborn and demanding. The decade-long saga with Kevin Smith over Cop Out served as the explosive centerpiece of this narrative. For a long time, that seemed to be the final word. Brilliant star, difficult man. But the heartbreaking news of his frontotemporal dementia diagnosis forces a re-evaluation. It changes the context of his later career, turning what was seen as laziness into a tragic struggle. Kevin Smith's apology marked a profound shift, an admission that the man he clashed with was likely already in the grip of a devastating illness. Today, the anger from his former collaborators has mostly been replaced by empathy. The feuds that were once juicy Hollywood gossip now feel like artifacts from a different era. Bruce Willis's legacy is, therefore, more complex than almost any other star of his level. It's a story of immense talent and success, but also one of deep conflict and personal struggle. It's a reminder that behind every larger-than-life Hollywood icon, there's a human being, with all the complexities, flaws, and hidden battles that come with it. As his family said when announcing his retirement, as Bruce always says, live it up. And looking back at his brilliant, tumultuous, and ultimately poignant career, it's clear he did just that, on his own, often difficult terms. The story of Bruce Willis is a powerful reminder that there's always more to the story in Hollywood. What do you think about his complicated legacy? Does his diagnosis change how we should view his past conflicts? Let us know in the comments. And for more deep dives into the most compelling stories in entertainment, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bruce Willis. The name alone conjures one of Hollywood's most legendary action heroes, the smirking, unstoppable John McClane. For decades, he was the face of blockbuster movies, an icon who could save the day with a clever remark and a spray of bullets. But behind the fame and on-screen charm, there's a much more complicated and messy story. It's a story of huge egos, on-set power plays, and professional relationships so toxic they blew up for the world to see. From directors who called working with him soul-crushing to co-stars who swore they'd never share a screen with him again. Today, we're digging into the intense conflicts and explosive feuds that built Bruce Willis's other, more difficult reputation. This is a journey through a legacy of friction, a path of burned bridges stretching from the start of his career to the very end. Before Yippee-ki-yay, before the dirty tank top and bare feet, there was David Addison. The role that launched Bruce Willis into stardom was on the 1980s TV series Moonlighting, a show that crackled with the electric, fast-talking chemistry between him and his co-star Sybil Shepherd. They were Maddie Hayes and David Addison, private investigators whose witty banter and smoldering romantic tension hooked millions. Their on-screen magic was undeniable, winning them awards and turning Willis from an unknown bartender into a household name practically overnight. But the fire viewers saw on TV was fueled by a very different and very real fire behind the scenes. The truth is, as their fame ballooned, so did their animosity. The feud between Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd is one of Hollywood's most legendary tales of co-star conflict. It was a clash of personalities and a battle of egos that started with a bit of real attraction but quickly soured into open hostility. In her memoir, Sybil Disobedience, Shepherd admitted there was an initial spark but confirmed things went downhill fast. Their co-star, Curtis Armstrong, was even more direct in his book, Revenge of the Nerd, stating plainly, yes, Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd hated each other. So what went wrong? It was a perfect storm. First, there was the power shift. When the show started, Sybil Shepherd was the big star, a famous model and actress. Willis was a nobody. But the massive success of his 1988 film, Die Hard, changed everything. Suddenly, Willis wasn't just a TV star. He was a global action hero, and his pay and status blew past Shepherd's. This created a palpable sense of competition. Shepherd herself admitted it bothered her. The grueling work schedule was another huge source of friction. Moonlighting was famous for its dialogue-heavy scripts and brutal production hours. Both stars were pushed to their breaking points, and according to the crew, this stress came out in constant arguments. Their real-life animosity became so baked into their process that they used it to fuel their scenes. Shepherd revealed, "At some point we realized we were fighting before every scene, and we went, okay, we'll have a little fight before we fight." The bickering you saw on screen wasn't just acting. It was their warm-up. The tension got so bad it became a nightmare for the crew. Curtis Armstrong described the set as a charged environment. The pettiness was extreme. Crew members reportedly had to measure the distance from each actor's trailer to the stage door to make sure one didn't have to walk a single step farther than the other. During Shepherd's pregnancy, schedules were adjusted, often making Willis work longer hours, which only made him more resentful. The fighting wasn't just verbal either. Armstrong described a moment when an on-screen argument turned real, ending with Shepherd allegedly flinging a briefcase against the door with a force that shook the set. Even after the show ended, the bitterness lingered for years. In a 1990 appearance, Willis admitted, "We didn't get along very well on that show. For nearly 30 years, they barely spoke." Their reunion finally happened in 2018 for the Comedy Central roast of Bruce Willis. Taking the stage, Shepherd didn't hold back, joking, "Our characters on Moonlighting weren't much of a stretch. I played a former model, which I was, and he played an a-hole, which he is. I know we haven't had a conversation in 30 years, but we'll always have something more important: residuals." The joke landed, but it was rooted in a deep and difficult history, a history that wrote the first chapter in the long book of Bruce Willis's contentious on-set reputation. As Bruce Willis went from TV heartthrob to full-blown movie star, the swagger that defined his character started showing up in his professional relationships. His rocket to fame with Die Hard gave him immense power in Hollywood, and with that power came an unshakable belief in his own instincts. This often set him on a collision course with the people meant to guide his performances, his directors and co-stars. The difficult reputation that started on Moonlighting was about to get cemented in the world of blockbuster filmmaking. A running theme in his career was clashing with authority on set. He didn't see himself as just an actor for hire. He acted like a guardian of his own brand, the Bruce Willis persona. This was on full display during the making of the 2003 action thriller, Tears of the Sun. The director, Antoine Fuqua, fresh off the success of Training Day, had a serious vision for the film. Willis, also a producer, reportedly wanted a more commercial, action-heavy movie. Their visions clashed, hard. In a frank 2004 interview with the BBC, Fuqua didn't beat around the bush when asked who the biggest pain in the arse he'd ever worked with was. He immediately named Willis. Fuqua made it clear their off-camera relationship was fine, but on set, it was war. "We just didn't get along," Fuqua stated. "Some men don't gel when it comes to work. You have different work ethics, different opinions, and we just didn't gel." Fuqua admitted he felt a power struggle with the bigger star, and that Willis's influence often won, pushing the movie in a direction Fuqua didn't want. This highlights a key part of Willis's reputation. He didn't just act in the film, he often behaved like he was the film. This wasn't a one-off. Veteran actor James Garner, who co-starred with Willis in the 1988 comedy Sunset, was openly critical of the younger actor. Garner, a respected figure from old-school Hollywood, was baffled by what he saw as Willis's poor work ethic. He told TV Guide that Willis is not that serious about his work. He thinks he's so clever he can just walk through it, make up dialogue, and stuff. "I don't think you work that way." The sentiment was the same on the set of the 1991 action film, The Last Boy Scout. His co-star, Damon Wayans, reportedly found Willis dismissive and condescending. The set was described as a tense and difficult shoot, full of testosterone and clashing egos. The stories all paint the same picture. From directors like Antoine Fuqua to seasoned co-stars like James Garner, the message was consistent. Working with Bruce Willis often meant you were in for a fight. It was a battle against an actor who believed his way was the only way and saw directors as obstacles if they didn't share his vision. This cemented his reputation as one of Hollywood's most formidable and frustrating collaborators. Of all the conflicts that have defined Bruce Willis's career, none is more public, more detailed, or more explosive than his feud with director Kevin Smith during the 2010 buddy cop comedy, Cop Out. This wasn't just creative differences. Smith called the experience King soul-crushing, a professional nightmare he has talked about so much it's become a Hollywood legend. For Kevin Smith, directing Cop Out should have been a dream job. He was a massive, lifelong Bruce Willis fan. Cop Out was also the only film Smith directed but didn't write, and a huge reason he took the gig was to work with his hero. The old saying, "Never meet your heroes," would turn out to be painfully true. The trouble started almost right away. Smith, known for his collaborative style, hit a brick wall with Willis. He found the actor totally disengaged and uncooperative. Smith recalled on Mark Maron's WTF podcast that Willis wouldn't even sit for a poster photo shoot, forcing the marketing team to Photoshop him into the ads with his co-star Tracy Morgan. The set became toxic. Smith has said Willis seemed to hate the very act of making movies. His saving grace was Tracy Morgan. He said repeatedly that without Morgan's positive energy, the experience would have been unbearable. At one point, Smith confessed, "Were it not for Tracy, I might have killed either myself or someone else in the making of King Cop Out." The feud hit its peak at the film's wrap party, which Willis skipped. Free from having to work with him, again, Smith reportedly raised a glass and toasted, "I want to thank everyone who worked on the film except for Bruce Willis, who is a King dick."